You're listening to the Desert Moon Hockey Podcast with Matt and Rich. Welcome back to episode 35 of the Desert Moon Hockey Podcast, more infamously known as... Matt?
The Alex Ald episode. So,
of course.
For whatever reason, I was thinking LaBarbera. Maybe he was 33. Maybe I'm an idiot. So I decided to look it up. I decided to look up the 35s. How the hell did I miss Kemper? Okay. How the hell did I miss Javi Bullen, Al Montoya, Louis Domingue, notable Coyotes draft bust Zach Bierk, and Alexander Ald, who, if you don't remember, won out the job, I think, in 08 again, or 07-08 against David Abisher. And that year, I got a mini goalie helmet at the Peoria Ice Den, signed by David Abisher. The dude played, 2 games that year? He got beat out. And Alex Ald sucked.
Yeah.
I know he started the season okay. I'll give him that. I think he was a 30-some-odd-year-old goaltender at the time. I don't really care. But, he sucked.
Yeah.
It led to Brizgalov, didn't it? That year, they claimed him off waivers.
I think so, yeah. I think so, something like...
it led to bigger and better things, really. What do you think about it? So, thank you, Alex Ald, for sucking so bad we got Ilya Brizgalov.
So in the context of hockey, we didn't really have much go on this week. We only had, I think, 2 games. I don't remember when we filmed the last week's podcast, but in that meantime, we only had roughly 2 games, 2 or 1 games, I don't remember. Nothing important happened during those games, but we do have a little bit of fun because I know personal events that you just did today. We're recording this on Saturday. Mm-hmm. You were able to head on out to the ice den to watch the boys skate around and get a little practice in. How was that?
It was... I was there for a couple of reasons. Number one, why not? I actually had the availability, not working this weekend, so let's do it. Number 2, I was trying to crash Craig Morgan's party, where he's like, oh, we're going to do that little segment for PHNX. As soon as he saw me, he walked away from me. Completely coincidental. I was walking down the stairs, and he was heading down the walkway. But honestly, I think it's funnier to just say that Craig Morgan made eye contact and ran away from a clout chaser, because that is infinitely more entertaining. And then just get footage for a micro vlog, because for whatever reason, everyone only likes to watch me vlog. I posted a report on the way to this event, and then I posted the vlog on the way home. The vlog's already done more than double the views and more than double the likes and engagement. And I'm like, wow.
Well, that just means that you're gonna have to start vlogging more often, doesn't it?
I'm seriously considering either putting on a Twitter poll, be like, should I do weekly vlogs? Should I turn into that FPHL goalie, Trav something, and just do weekly vlogs? Oh, God.
Yep.
Love him, by the way. He does great content. It isn't a knock on him. I just never pictured myself a vlogger.
Yep. Well, that's definitely good news that you didn't, get murdered by Craig Morgan or anything like that.
Get murdered by Craig Morgan, or get kicked out by asking Dylan Gunther if he wants to join the Weak Chin Society. Because I didn't realize this. I've seen him in person, I think once or twice before. I just, for whatever reason, never realized it. I got a really good look at his bare chin, and I was like, I took a little bit of footage. I'm not bullying you, Dylan. I swear to God, I thought it was funny. But I'm like, dude, oh my God, inaugural member of the Weak Chin Society.
Yep.
And I ended up leaving halfway through practice because I got bored, and I knew Elena was tired, but she didn't want to say anything. But on the way home, found out we could have met Jack McBain and Dylan Gunther. And I'm like, dude, I could have asked Dylan Gunther to join the Weak Chin Society. I could have asked Jack McBain if how the hell did he turn his face into Connor Garland's, but bigger. It's the only reason I could recognize him at this point. Is he just looks like Connor Garland, but 8 feet taller. But one funny thing did happen. Shout out to the Mullet Kids. So we're sitting in the 3rd row, kind of off in this little corner, and 2 rows ahead of me is this kid in a Doan jersey, white Kachina, good choice by the way, and he just kept looking over at me, and I noticed I was like, what's going on there? And Elena's like, he's watching one of your videos. I'm like, what? Apparently he's watching the most recent ASU one, and I'm like, oh, so I got recognized, and this Mullet Kid is staring at me. So I recorded a clip. I had to cut the joke. Elena didn't like the joke, but I was like, oh, Elena noticed it first. I want you guys to know Elena's the one looking at kids, not me. So I had to cut that, but I can use it for a little bonus material to joke around here. So to you, Mullet Kid, hi.
Hello.
Good dough in Jersey. And you could have said hi. My wife would have only yelled at you a little bit because, being married sucks.
Oh, come on now. It's not that bad.
But I also know she'll comment. If I trash talk a little bit, I'll get her to comment. And that's a little more engagement on the podcast.
You're pushing the buttons here, all right? I know what's going on. As for button pushing, we had two injured players come back onto the ice and skate
No, stop,
in practice.
stop. As for button pushing, make sure to hit like, comment, subscribe.
There you go.
That was a perfect transition. You nincompoop.
I missed it. That's a good point.
I thought you were setting that up perfectly. I literally thought you were setting that up. I was like, you sly dog. And then you just kept flying past. But speaking of these injured players, guess who I saw skating on the ice? One of the first players out there, actually.
Would that be Nick Schmaltz or Jacob Chikrin?
It would be one. Jacob, please get me Matthew Knives, whatever your name is, and a first-round pick, Chikrin. And I was hooting and hollering, please get me some firsts when he was on the ice. He looks good, by the way. Like, he's skating pretty well. Hopefully he's motivated. He comes back, I think, on Monday is his first game back, him and Schmaltz. Give me a goal, opening game. Get me at least 3 points in the first 5 games. Show that you're right back on track. I want him gone within 10 games. I want this trade done. I don't want it dragging on. I don't want the risk of another injury. I want this Fabergé egg that's been super glued together to get out there, look shiny, get some idiot to pay way too much for it, and then it can break on their own time. I just want some good prospects and picks.
Damn, that's a savage way of explaining somebody in their health state. But I guess that's pretty fair. I have a soft spot for Chikrin. I do love the guy, but I know you're much more difficult with him.
Like, yeah. I don't hate him at all. Like, seems like a good guy. I want him to succeed, but he's made it clear he doesn't want to stay here. To my knowledge, while that little run could have done a little bit to help change his mind, doesn't mean it will, doesn't mean it did. So the fact that I still know he wants to leave, I'm like, dude, that's great. Good for you. Please, get me a good returning. GTFO. No hard feelings. I don't hate you, but you made it public, so you gotta get rid of you as soon as we can with the value as high as we possibly could get away with.
Well, from one cracked egg to another, how was Nick Schmaltz looking?
From the little bit that I was watching, he was kind of playing the role of those little 3-on-3 drills. He's on the outside. I'm assuming trying to play like defense when you're doing your 3-on-3 overtime practices. He seemed fine, a little sluggish, a little slow. I'm assuming it's rust. Should be more than fine after a couple of games. I just also don't want that Fabergé egg to break again because I'm a little concerned. Not because it's going to kick Gunther or Michelli out of the lineup. At this point, you can't. But where is his spot going to be? Do you put him right back on the first line? Maybe, but who does it impact, Michelli or Gunther? Who's going to get their ice time cut? Whose production's going to start going down? Will it hurt the lineup? Or is Tournier going to say, hey, Boyd, Schmaltz, Keller, or even just Schmaltz and Keller have really good chemistry, but you're not scoring enough to make up for it, or we don't want to rush Schmaltz back 100% just yet, so you keep Michelli and Gunther playing in your top 6 and work Schmaltz into it? Like, I'm a little concerned. I don't want to throw that all out of whack because Michelli and Gunther have looked good. They've both been good, so I just don't want... I think they both earned their ice time. I just don't want anything breaking in this lineup. But anything is better than running 7 defensemen. I get it. It was working for a little bit. I don't know why you did it again against Vegas, but whatever. I guess we're just here.
I could see it being the case where, like, maybe Gunnar goes down to the third line and is with Hayden and another winger, maybe Fisher or somebody down there. And then, like, lineup-wise, you'd have Schmaltz, Boyd, Keller, and then you'd have... I'm drawing a blank. Michelli, Bukestad, Krause as your second line.
How has Bukestad played as well as he has? Like, I'm not even talking about scoring. How has he just played well enough to be like your solid middle 6 center as opposed to just like a straight fourth liner? Like, I gotta
Yeah.
give him a little bit of props. Buke's come in and played well.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
is it Booger? Is that his nickname?
I don't know. I don't want to call him that. That's pretty gross. But yeah, that's what I would see. And then, even though yes, it's third line time, it's not nearly as much as first and second line. You know that Gunner's still going to get power play time, whether it's PP2 or whatever. And that's still a respectable line with Hayden out there, and then whoever you want to put on the other side of the wing for
Jack McBain. You can have the McBain Kane train over there on the wing because he's been kind of playing both. From what I can tell when I'm looking at the lineups, he's playing both, but mostly center, it seemed. It also could just be not paying close enough attention. Make sure to let me know if I'm an idiot in the comments. Oh yeah, I'm getting better at this.
I like the that idea though. I like moving McBain to the wing or Hayden or I don't know if they're same stick hand or not, but maybe you have your strong hand draw and like that person can move in to take the draws, and then you transfer back into a wing position. There's a bit of options there, but I do like what McBain's been doing for producing offense and whatnot. He hasn't gotten necessarily on the score sheet, but I've seen like quite a few really good chances out of him that I've really liked that were prime time opportunity.
He's just fully embraced, like we've talked about it before. He has fully embraced this bottom six like grinder role, and he's still generating chances. He still has 2 goals? I know one's an empty netter, leave him alone. But he has 2 goals and I think 2 or 3 assists. Like he still has a couple decent points for being a straight up bottom sixer. Like he hasn't sniffed top 6, which is fine. I think the players above him are either playing better or they're more suited for the role. Like they've earned that time. But with how he's just adopted it and embraced this role, I think he's played really well. I mean, hell, I liked how how Fisher's played. Christian, Chikrin, whatever. how Fisher's played. So it's just, I don't mind a little bit of tweaking. I just don't want Gunner to lose his confidence because once young kids, you get on a little bit of a cold streak. I know it wouldn't be as bad in Arizona as let's say Toronto. God forbid you don't score in 3 games. You're probably getting pucks pelted at you or something.
Yeah.
But I just think that it'll be interesting. Just as interesting as they broke the streak. They were the last team to score at least 2 goals in every game, and they lose back-to-back 4-1 campaigns. Honestly, I don't think they played poorly against New Jersey. They just had terrible discipline and wouldn't get out of the box. But even then, they walked out of there with 2 power play goals, and it was tied twice. Then Clayton Keller starts his 3-game goal streak in that game. He has 7 on the season now. He's playing really well. He has 8 points in his last 7 games. 4 of those being half of those being goals, half of those being assists. That's an easier way to say it than my overcomplicated behind. But I mean, any other takeaways from those games? Minus it kind of seems like they came back down to earth. And Vegas is just so much better than them. That's fair. New Jersey is they were the hottest team in the league. They're still the hottest. That's fair. New York, I don't know if they're supposed to be really good or really bad or really in the middle. If you look at their fans on Twitter, the same.
I mean, they're
supposed
supposed to be. They're supposed to be good, but at the same time, people are extremely critical of that team, even though they are doing quite well. One thing I did want to note before we move too far out of the way, the person that you could also stick on that line, that third line, would be Nick Ritchie. I completely forgot about Nick Ritchie. I was like, oh yeah, he's on the team.
Weirdest spot on the team because it's like again, and this is nothing against him. He seems like a fine dude. I kind of feel like we're all biding our time until the trade because he is probably we're ahead of schedule. We are clearly ahead of schedule. But does that mean we're going to stay ahead of schedule, or should they still just play this smart? So it's like he's probably a little too old to want to stay on the core for the rebuild. I mean, look, with how much Tournier has gotten out of this roster, I'm just going to say it here, it wouldn't even shock me if they made the playoffs as soon as next year. It just depends on where they end up. That doesn't mean they will. I'm just saying I wouldn't be shocked because it seems like they're just ahead of schedule. But you also don't want to pull a John Chaika and get a little too green in the eyes, and you're like, oh, hey, let's just throw away the future for a bunch of pieces right now that are barely going to fit or theoretically might fit, and they should be really good moves, and they're not. and then that nice core you had doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
Oh, hey,
let's throw away a Dawson Mercer for us to get blown out in the first round against the Avs. You know, not
So it's like,
necessarily a good trade there.
So it's like, stay the course. Like, if it happens and they make the playoffs next year, great. 100% fantastic. But don't force it. Don't start making those big trades and acquisitions yet. So for a guy like Richie, I can't help but think he's not going to be here by trade deadline. And I don't know if it's just because I've been accepting that for so long. I keep forgetting about him on the team.
Yeah. I like Richie. I like the way he plays. Maybe he comes back. I think he's on 1 year left on that contract, so maybe he comes back in the offseason. You never know. But with that being said, definitely need to get some sort of asset for him. Trade him away, get him off the team, get him to get, playoff time or whatever he wants to do, and maximize the assets that you can get for him.
100%. Because it's just... I think that's why we keep forgetting about him, though. Because the core is really showing itself, and like Nick Ritchie and Lawson Krause, to at least in my mind, a play style degree, essentially the same player. But I just think Lawson Krause probably a little more, at least in my mind, like using that physicality more efficiently. He's probably a little better of a shooter, probably a little better overall. Definitely showing he's a good leader on the ice. So if you had to choose one of those two, and he's also younger. You pick Lawson Krause, so Lawson Krause stays in your top 9 regardless.
Yep.
Where's the room for Richie?
Yep. Yeah, they play kind of virtually the same role, and somebody's got to give. And obviously, when you sign a 5-year contract or whatever it was that Lawson Krause signed with the Coyotes, me thinks that the other guy is probably going to be the one that gives. But talking about things that are giving. Certainly Clayton Keller's leg is not, because he has been racing off to skyrocketing numbers quietly, and I just did the math. Quietly, he's on pace for a 92-point season. When's the last time we've seen a Coyote on pace for a 92-point season? That is crazy.
The only two players that come to mind, and I don't even know what their pace would have been, it would have to be either Ray Whitney or Radim Verbata when they were playing together, like back in 2011, 2012. Like, it would have to be them. I can't think of another player that was on that pace. Even when Keller had that 65-point rookie season, I don't think he was ever on that pace.
That short stint with Lee Stempniak when we got him from the trade deadline. You remember that? Do you remember that crazy
did he go
team?
off when we got him?
Yeah, he was scoring goals just left and right. I want to say he had 11 goals in 8 games or something like that. It was crazy. And that team...
Fact check this.
Fact check me, please. And what's even more crazy about that is, if you remember, that team was, super clutch. They'd be down, 2 goals in the third period. And with, 2 or 3 minutes left, they would score 2 to tie it up, and then just Verbata would win it in the shootout. It was so crazy. That team was so...
In 2010, we got him at the deadline. 18 games, 14 goals, 4 assists, 18 points. So, he was... He was going off.
Yeah, I remember that. I was just like, oh my god, what is going on? Yep.
If he plays 2 more games, we have another 20-goal scorer, and he only played 20 games! If he got 2 extra games. So it's I can't think of a pace like that. I guarantee if you ask, Steve Peters or Craig Morgan or even, Jason Rudy. Love you, by the way, Rudes. But it's you ask someone that's, really involved with the team. Oh, yeah, it was... Shane Doan back in 2007, or it was X player between this oddly specific date and this oddly specific date. But off the top of my head, just those are the only 2 players that come to mind would have to be one of those, or even, you just brought up Lee Stempniak in the trade deadline acquisition in 2010, where it's it has not only been a joy to watch Keller turn into what he's turned into, it's not only been a joy to watch how well he's played this year, and so quietly, because I feel like these goals are coming in not necessarily garbage time, but they're stopping the bleeding type goals, or they're goals where, hey, for the most part, we're just adding to a lead. He has a couple tying goals, I think 1 game-winning goal. I should fact check that, but I'm just going to pretend I know what I'm talking about.
He has no game-winning goals.
None? He had the tying goal against New Jersey. He tied another game, I think, earlier on before that. Got the numbers in front of you, buddy?
I'm trying to pull them, but the NHL website's not good.
No, it really isn't. They ruined like the radio portion of it, where it used to just be you click on the little radio icon, it'll show you all the active games. Now you got to go through a list by division and find what team specific radio. And I'm like, this is like, it feels like 14 extra clicks, and it also barely functions, and it also keeps like, whether I'm on Wi-Fi or data, it constantly skips, pauses, takes forever to buffer. I'm a minute behind. My wife walks in, hey, do you know Clayton Keller scored? And I'm like, dog, we're still shorthanded.
Yep. Clayton Keller has 3 power play goals, no game-winning goals, and no shorthanded points or goals. 7 power play points, though.
So it's like he's either helping tie the game or kind of adding to a lead or stopping the bleeding. So it really feels low-key. It feels really quiet. I don't think anyone, except for the Coyotes fans that are focusing on it, really realized just how productive he's being. To where it's like, we might have our first 100-point player in effing ever.
Yeah, well, if that short little stint of 16 games or whatever it was is Nick Schmaltz's only injury this season, you know, that can only increase the production out of Clayton Keller because those two play so well together. So you never know. The pace might get even faster for him.
Do you remember your reaction to the Clayton Keller contract extension?
I remember trying to justify it to a lot of people, saying it wasn't that bad.
Sorry, go ahead.
I that's what I mainly took away from it, because everybody was like, "Oh my God, $7 million for a kid that's like unproven," and I'm like, "Bro, he's been the leading scorer on this team for like 3 years, even if he's only getting 40 or 50 points. Like, when you compare that to everybody else on the team, like, he's still the leading scorer."
Clayton Keller contract. This was signed. I just want to see when this was signed.
Oh, like 2018, 2027? 2018, I'm pretty sure, right? 2018.
No, 2020, 2021. So I would have been covering when this happened.
Oh, when it was signed, or when it started?
Yeah, when it was signed. When it was signed.
Really?
So
it was 2020
is when it was signed. Yep. We are in year 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years remaining, baby. Anyway, here's what I vaguely remember, and feel free to go back looking through my back catalog. I remember thinking, because he was starting to really come into it, he was starting to develop.
Liar!
Game.
I'm fact checking you here. Signing date September 9th, or sorry, September 4th, 2019. So I was still off, but it was 2019.
Whoa, what do you mean?
Yes. And then the contract started 2020, 2021 because he still had one season left on the entry level.
I think you're right. I think I clicked on the wrong link. Or I read it backwards. You see, this is what happens when I don't wear my glasses, but the problem is, I don't know if you could tell,
I was
really
thinking
bad reflection.
I was thinking, because I'm like 2020, 2021, like I don't even think Chaika was even there at that point. But
so
continue on.
Late 2019 then, right?
Yeah, late 2019. Continue on though. Sorry, I had to call you out.
So I was probably totally against it then. If that's when it was signed, I was probably totally against it.
I remember
he was still struggling terribly in that, and I was like, dude, what the hell? So
I remember the Clayton Keller hate video.
I always talk about it. That's why I was trying to be very careful of like when the timeline was, because no, I'm not going to retroactively pretend I always loved Keller, because I'm like, dog, what the hell is this? But anyway, so then right around when this kicks in, I'm then looking at this contract as like, that might end up being just fair, like a fair contract. Now, and I asked Craig Morgan, so hopefully we'll get a decent response for the mailbag. I think it's on Monday. But this might have turned into the bargain of, like, not the century, but like the Coyotes probably franchise. Because if this isn't just a point per game pace, which would be ridiculous for just under $8 million per season cap hit. That's ridiculous. Like, when he was still, okay, his top is 65 points, I think that's justifiable, but probably like barely fair market.
Yep.
If we're going to get even higher, we're going to get 90 points, we're going to be sniffing 100 points. This is a bargain. There are players that are making 10, 11 million a season that I guarantee don't sniff 70 points this season. And
Yep.
Clayton Keller's out here around 90 to maybe 100, depending on if Schmaltz comes back and he looks good and he starts getting that point per game up even slightly higher. You're
Yep.
looking at a 100-point season, and it's already above a point per game just in this last stretch.
Yeah, I completely agree. For big boy contracts handed out by the Coyotes, I would say Keller's is up there. Chikrin's is probably up there. If you're gonna go for like dollar amounts, I mean, dude, Connor Garland signed for like league minimum, and he was like 50 points or something. Like when you compare like dollar amounts comparatively to how many points you got, like that year that Connor Garland that we had where you started to blow up, like that was insane value. Like when you think about like the price per point.
It was like what 22 goals that first season. It wasn't. He played like 60 some odd games, and I think they sent him down at the end of the year to play with Tucson to try to get him in the playoffs.
Yep,
and he still scored like 22 goals. I think he was like just under, or like right around 40 points, but it was still a league minimum contract. You're a point per every other night for a regular season, and you played like 20 less games.
Yep.
that is insane value, and like it's just good that the piece you're building around in Clayton Keller is turning into not only like that franchise cornerstone. I definitely think that a Adam Fantilli or even better Connor Bedard. I shouldn't have looked at the highlights. I shouldn't have watched that Winnipeg highlight against Connor Geeky's team. Look,
that was a good highlight.
At the Mullet, getting to talk to even more people that are like talking to NHL officials and talking to like NHL personnel.
Yeah.
And relaying it like info to me just casually. Like, it's made me so much more hyped for the kid, and that's why like I had to keep telling myself over and over, the Coyotes never pick first overall. Adam Fantilli's the goal. It's getting harder and harder by the day. That kid is so damn good, but it's like,
yeah,
it's as long as that cornerstone of the franchise is developing the way he is, you can already see kind of what we might need. We're still going to need either Gunther to turn into that 30-goal scorer, which I still think easily he has the potential, or get that number one center. Like, you really need that number one center that we've never really had, and it's just like the core starting to solidify a little early. Like, I'm loving this. I am absolutely loving this.
Do you think, like, worst case, we drop to like a 3 or a 4, we end up picking, like, let's say a guy like Leo Carlson out of the Swedish Hockey League, really good player, but not very many people are talking about him nearly as much as Fantilli and Bedard. Still really good. Let's say you don't end up getting your center, your bona fide number one center. Do you think that Logan Cooley can take the reins of that and actually project out to a first-line center?
I have no idea. I don't even know how to begin to answer that question because just, again, very brief bits I've been able to watch him, and he's playing collegiate level right now, so it's really hard to kind of project how that translates to the NHL. Yeah. I still think he probably ends up being a winger in the NHL, which is fine. If you pair that with Keller, let's say that you move on from Schmaltz, or Schmaltz just goes down within the lineup, you pair that with Keller, that's great. Pair that with Michelli, Gunther, that's great. No one's going to complain about that. But I think it's so hard, especially as it might be a little too early as well. But even then, if we can get him as a 2C, I still think that's more than enough value out of him, and then Hayton just drops a 3C.
Or you get my insane theory right here. You get the all college line, right? so Chikrin's moved on for Nyes, and Nyes plays with Cooley right now in NCAA. So you have Cooley, Nyes, and then on the other wing you put Josh Stone on it, and you just have an all college line.
But what line is that? Like, that seems like a perfect second line, as long as they're all, like, at the same level, like, they're all in their development. But I feel like if you put that as the third line, regardless of development, you wouldn't be getting the maximum out of them. So it's like, you're either forcing them a little bit, or that's the perfect spot at the perfect time. And I'm like, let's get Nyes first. Let's trade Chikrin to get Nyes. Let's see how it goes. But I think that Cooley probably is going to be the 2C. I'm also insane enough to where the Coyotes have, is it 2 firsts this year? Or would it be more depending on this Chikrin trick? I think they still have a second first round.
So right now I think they only have 1 first. I'll go take a look, but if they were to end up trading Chikrin, obviously they would get a secondary first. So
and then Goss is
currently
getting another first. I just don't know what year.
So this year's draft is actually a bit quiet with how many picks we've got. it's a little bit more normal. Currently, we only have our own first, our own second, and then in the third we have the Capitals third,
What the hell
and then
are you
the rest
bitching
are all our own. So right now, as of currently in this draft, we haven't gotten very many picks or whatnot, which is a little unfortunate, but there's a lot to be done still by this trade deadline. Once again, we have potentially a ghost trade, we have potentially a Richie trade, and then also potentially a Chikrin trade. So we could end up realistically seeing 3, maybe even 4 more picks coming in the first 2 rounds again. And that's not even to begin to go on to show like how crazy the next couple of drafts are, because once again, Bill Armstrong's just absolutely doing a crazy job at continuing to add on to those seconds. He's got, in 2024, he's got 3 seconds, 4 thirds. That's crazy. 4 thirds. So there's, let's see. I'm going to count how many picks do we have in 2024. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We have 14 picks in 2024 so far.
Damn.
That is crazy. And then
2025. It's weird that he wanted to get 2024 assets. I'm like, dude, he wants futures too. He doesn't just want this next draft. And that's what happens when you get futures.
Yep.
And then drafts. Oh, hey, we don't know who's going to be the 2024 picks yet. We'll just throw it away. And now we got 14.
Yeah. And you want to know something even more crazy? 2025, he's got 4 more second round picks. So like this dude is just designing. Like, he's commanding the second round. Like, if this turns around and you know, we see like a dominant Coyotes team as the arena's being built and whatnot, Bill Armstrong will go down in history as the leader of the second round, because this dude has drafted what? How many seconds did we draft last year? We had like 5, but we traded some away. We traded 1 for.
I think it was 3.
Yeah, because we had 5 going into the draft, and then we traded 1 away from McBain, or was it Smith? I think it was McBain, which brought us to 4, and then we traded 2 away to get the geeky pick, I think. So did we end up with 2?
Another second with that Logan or Maverick Lamoureux pick, or was that for the next season? You know,
that might have been.
He made so many draft pick trades. It's like it's hard to keep them all in your head.
It's crazy though. Like the amount of just like taking seconds and then turning them into usable assets is just insane. Like it baffles my mind that he's able to do this, and like nobody's really like caught on and like, oh, you know, maybe we should do that too. Like,
but also like if they start, let's just say next year's year they break out and make a run towards the playoffs. Whether they make it there or not, let's just say, all right, they still are in a position with the amount of assets they've gained, and also with how much better their scouting looks right now, to where they could build a playoff contender and then continue to draft efficiently and get decent prospects in their system to be minimum in the middle of the league in their prospect pool. And you know what? You don't want to be there. You don't want to be mediocre at like in the standings. Being at least in the middle of the prospect pool, that means no matter what, you're probably a move or 2 away, or a good draft pick or 2 away from going up. You could also go down, but you know, just a move or 2 away.
What's important is like, yes, you can say like, oh, I found this gem from like really hard efforts of scouting and putting in the time. But you got to remember, like, a lot of the players that don't work out are good players. It's just being in the wrong situation. You know, when we look at the Coyotes, I don't know how many lists I saw over the past decade that go, oh yeah, the Coyotes have one of the best prospect pools in the league, and then it just fizzles out because there's no development there. When you start to create like a culture of winning and success in the NHL, that just like resonates all the way down your prospect pool. So like having all of those second round assets, you know, once again, seven second round assets in the next 3 years, actually 8 because of this upcoming draft so far. So So eight second round assets in the next 3 years, right? That is crazy amounts of value. And when you start to get winning, and then you get these really good role players that generally that's what you're going to find in the second round. You're going to find like good role players. You're not going to find like a first line gem, generally speaking, but you'll find like a really good third liner that you're like, yeah, this guy won us a cup. That's where those all come from. And being able to put those kids into successful roles by pushing them further down in the lineup is just super important. I don't know. I'm rambling here.
I just want to know in general, and it has to be because people get complacent or they get a little too cocky or they need to keep a playoff streak going, Detroit, where it's like you have these great players, these great teams. Let's just take Pittsburgh. They've won 3 cups with Crosby. How come they're constantly with one of the worst prospect pools? Like, how come we've never seen a system where someone's been able to maintain a good vision and not give up the entire farm? I get it. You're going to give up assets when you want to make those big playoff runs, but how often do we see a couple too many of those kind of trades? And then, like, you have a team that, well, you have to keep it going for as long as possible, throwing away the future, because this core is all you got. You're probably going to suck for, like, half a decade, if not longer, after that. So it's like, I'm just wondering why we've never seen like these model organizations keep it going, and BA is putting us in a position where they could actually do this in the modern era. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to have a top 5 prospect pool and to go to the Stanley Cup Finals every year or something stupid like that, but I'm just surprised why more GMs don't also value the future. They don't also value the prospects. And it's just like, we need to win at all costs, even when our roster is not one piece away.
Yep. I mean, if you're going to ask me, when I remember when the light was kind of fading on the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I was like, oh, this team's going to suck, right? Everybody's like, oh, the prospects aren't there, like, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember, a little nobody, I had no clue who he was, in Jake Gensel just quietly gets put on Sidney Crosby's line, and then turns into a pretty dominant goal scorer. I think last season he had 84 points and 40 goals. Like, and he was a third rounder. Like, no offense, do you really think that was the scouts just absolutely found a gem, or was that he fit perfectly into the system that they have been cultivating there? You know,
you're also playing with Crosby, who's one of the top at least 10 players of all time. Like, I'm more of an Ovechkin guy. I'm really happy to see Ovechkin closer and closer to that goal scoring record. But I can't deny Crosby's a top 10 player, and top 10 might even be insulting.
Definitely.
When you think about it,
I think he's probably gotten pretty close to top 5. You'd think, right? Like,
gotta be somewhere.
The points are there.
It's upper top 10. Like, it can't be like at number 10. So it's like that also might be a little insulting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like the Coyotes are in a really good position to where I don't know what the phenomenon is. I don't know if it's just people get, like I said, just arrogant, complacent. They freak out. Oh, hey, I got to keep the playoffs going. But I feel like the Coyotes are finally in the perfect situation to build a contender and maintain that contender. Like, not just, okay, you got the car, you're going to keep the car running, and the car is going to last you 20 years. And you know what? If we can get 10 years of dominant play, and then at the very least, good enough prospects to keep the team competitive without, like, bottoming out or losing, like, all your assets, I think there's not really nothing more you could ask for. Like, just to be honest.
Yeah. I'm looking at teams here, because I remember another team that was, like, regarded as, like, having little to no, like, depth in terms of prospects was the Boston Bruins. And the Boston Bruins are currently one of the best teams in hockey right now, with only 2 losses, whether that's OT or regulation, in the NHL so far, with 15 wins. Crazy how good they've been. And I don't really think anybody was talking about them being this good so far. Like, well, now they are, but going into going into the season, everybody's like, oh yeah, that's the team that's going to fall out of the playoffs, like, for sure. And it's just crazy. Like, this is what the value of getting a few of those really good assets at the top of the draft and just like it resonates through the team for decades.
So it's just, I think it's a good time to be a Coyotes fan, to be honest. Like,
Oh yeah, party whether we win or lose, that's for sure.
It's like, it's funny because after they were on that 3-game winning streak, I was relieved they lost against New Jersey, because I'm like, yes, the optimistic side of me is like, of course I want them to make the playoffs this year. Of course if they won all 82, I'd be happy. It's like, yes, it's never going to happen. It's not realistic. But it's like, but also, you show me more Bedard footage. You show me more Fantilli footage. And I'm like, you guys know you're supposed to suck this year.
Yep.
Like, I know I was a strong advocate last year when the goal was Shane Wright. And I'm like, look, they can still get Shane Wright and not be a terrible team because of the amount of first-round assets they have. And I think Bedard's on a different level. I don't know if any sane team would trade. Like, let's just say Coyotes get 5 overall, right? Let's say they end up getting 2 more first-rounders for the Chikrin and Gosper trades. Let's just say those first-rounders are 11th and 28th, pretty much what we ended up getting this year. Do you think any team, doesn't matter what the team is, doesn't matter who the GM is, would take all 3 of those first-rounders for the number 1 overall this year after the draft is calculated?
I would say no. I think first overall, like, you don't trade that ever. This draft, at least. Obviously, if you're like, oh, this, next few drafts are like kind of weak or whatever, maybe you could see it for like a good player. But yeah, you're trading away Connor McDavid for Magic Beans. Like, I will take Connor McDavid all day. I will trade 3 firsts for Connor McDavid right now. Like, don't care.
So it's like, last year was Shane Wright, and especially with the Uri Slafkovsky stuff, I really feel like that was probably like the first overall pick that could have been traded as a first overall pick, like as, once the lottery's done, that we could have seen traded in a while.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a situation where even 3 firsts is going to get it done. I legit think if you offered 3 firsts this year and 2 firsts next year, you probably still don't get a yes. Now you might,
depending on the team. Yeah, depending on the team. Like if you're like 11th and you jump to first, and you're like, okay, the Coyotes are offering us number 4, their pick next year, and like all the assets that they got from like the deadline. Mm-hmm. I would be kind of tempted. Like I would be like, okay, this could like better my team permanently for like decades.
So it's like, but you're still probably not going to get it done. That still probably doesn't happen. And I think that's just like, not only how good Bedard is, but it's like this draft is completely different. I still think you get a top 3 pick, even top 5 pick, you're going to get a player that's going to help your franchise. You're going to get a really good player unless you draft like the 203rd ranked player with number 5 overall or something like that. But I am actually on the pro lose side. More than I would like to be, more than I would like to admit to, because I'm like, this actually is the draft where lose at all costs, like, in my opinion.
At this point, Matt, you can be happy. You can rest assured that when you made your prediction at the beginning of the year, you said the Coyotes will battle for a playoff spot. They made a playoff spot 15 games into the season, so you won. You got it. They did it. You didn't say what the timeline was. You didn't say what the timeline was. You just said that they were going to make a playoff spot, and they did. So
I said they could battle for a second wild card spot.
And they were in the second wild card. So you just never gave a timeline. Hey, it's an absolute win for Matt.
I'm a prophet. Like, this is why people are, like, this is the only reason why people watch me. They're like, this guy says so many stupid, outlandish things, and, like, 70% of them are either completely true or technically true. So it's like, I guess he's our new prophet, and we will follow him to the promised land.
Exactly.
That's why you keep me around. That's the only reason you do the podcast. You're like, this idiot just talks. And people are, like, mesmerized by the sheer stupidity of the peanut show going on in front of him.
I'm surprised and baffled at how well you can speak without going, That's me right there. I do it so much, and it's awful. Whereas you're pretty good. You're pretty fluid. You're fluid at keeping the conversation going.
here is my here's my only trick for that is I talk to myself a lot. Ever since I was a little kid, I didn't really have a whole lot of friends.
Oh, so you're insane.
It's not those little violin moment. Like, no, like I actually just didn't have a whole lot of friends. So it's mostly literally me with like Sonic toys, creating these elaborate storylines and bouncing off one another. Like that's how you do it. And then you just talk to yourself for 10 years. You finally get a girlfriend. You make sure she's toxic, and then it'll create this nice little bubble of he will be so charismatic after he gets proper mental treatment in 10 years.
Perfect. I like to hear that. I did the same thing. Except I was just, not good at talking. So I would always, like, Richard, why'd you do that, you idiot? Like, talk to yourself that way. And it did not help. It did not help me. You
never just, like, dozed off in class and just created these weird, elaborate storylines? Like, for the longest time, I couldn't sleep without, imagining a scenario and creating a storyline. It wasn't until I started paying for my own internet plan on my phone, and I get unlimited data, and I'm like, I am going to listen to scary stories or reruns of Family Guy or something stupid like that. That's going to help me go to sleep.
No, I don't think I have ever done that. I think I'm not in that boat, unfortunately.
Am I just mentally insane?
Probably. I think we both are.
That explains it. I think. Yeah. I think like that perfectly explains everything about me, and also the fact that now, if you watch this footage back from when you complimented me, there have been at least 80% more likes, and stuttering throughout the conversation because now you trip me up.
Listeners, I just want you to know your breathing pattern is very important. Breathe in, breathe out.
Are we doing ASMR
now? No, now you just can't stop thinking about breathing, listeners. I'm sorry to do this to you. Make sure to breathe. You will die if you do not. Okay, I'm done.
All right. That was weird. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, Richie.
Yes.
Pick a card, any card. If you can pick the dragon, you can pick the next topic.
All right.
1,
dragon.
2, 3, or 4.
Okay, so everybody knows that you always want to pick the first one, but then what happens is because everybody wants to pick the first one, they move to the third one because you can't pick the second one. There's no possible way that it will be in the second one, so you go to the third one. But then you realize that the third one's the most common pick because everybody goes to the third one. So then you're like, okay, well, it's got to be the last because nobody wants the last card. It's for certain going to be crap because you're going to hide it earlier on into the pick. So with that decision, I'm going to say the first one.
You picked the one that wasn't. It's a crab.
Oh,
no! Because, like, here was number 4. It's a little baby dragon. Here is number 3. It's Pyldramon. He's technically a dragon. And then number 2 was a dragon. But, like, I really like that conversation. I want to take away the only thing I ever actually learned from Mansers growing up. I don't know if you ever watched, like, Spike TV, whatever the hell it was on when I was in high school.
I remember that.
Shows.
Yeah.
So it was how to pick the best bathroom stall. Everyone always thinks you go to the first stall, so they go to the second stall. But oh wait, the second one probably gets used too, so you go to the third. In reality, the third in a 3-stall system, the third stall is always the most used and trashed, and the first stall because nobody wants it because they think it's used and trash. That's your golden point. Always go to the first stall in a 3-stall setup. And yes, we are giving you life advice from Mansers of all places.
Yep, that's why I went with number 1. That's exactly why. Not from Mansers, but just it's you never think it's going to be. You always think it's the first one, but it's never the first one. So it is the first one.
But also, you never go to the middle because everyone always picks. That's why a lot of places now, if they give you multiple choice, like even on your quizzes at school or whatever, if you ever notice why there's always an even number, is because if you give 3 options or 5 options, if it's an odd number, people will always go with the middle. It's not just, I was satisfied or dissatisfied. I was neutral to the service you provided me. If I have to guess between 3, 10, and 13, well, the one in the middle is probably good enough, so you go with the middle. Like, it's a weird thing we do where we always go with the middle because we're all lukewarm, moderate political commentary.
Yes. You kept that one real PG. I like it.
I forgot what I was gonna say, and I'm like, I only have either dirty jokes or stupidity, so I'll just go with the political humor.
Well, talking about non-PG, let's talk about how the Coyotes have gone from being in a playoff spot, and in one short week, they're now number 4 in the league. That's number 4 from the bottom. I should give some context there. Number 4
we're going
from
to
the
talk
bottom.
about draft odds, so draft odds number 4.
Yes, definitely pretty crazy how when you actually look at the numbers, like this year's league has been quite close. Like usually you have a couple of teams that really just break out and they're like, destroying the bottom feeders, but there's a lot of competition. Like, I mean, the Colorado Avalanche, who won the cup, are currently at number 14 in the league. So it's actually surprising at like how much parity there currently is in the league.
You know what? I know I'm going to bring up Johnny Gaudreau, and he knew they're going for Connor Bedard. That's why he signed there.
Oh, true.
He was thinking long term, baby.
Yeah.
No, but I have no idea how I just lost my train of thought there. I'm going to blame you. I'm going to be passive aggressive about it, and then I'm going to make a vaguely offensive comment that you also can't quite justify as offensive. So you're sitting there thinking you're crazy.
Okay, so aside from your vaguely offensive comment, you were talking about the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I'm assuming on how bad their season has gone so far and how they have pretty high odds. That is one of those teams, and the other team that's just below it, the Ottawa Senators, who everybody said was going to be a better than the Toronto Maple Leafs this year.
Well, no, I didn't say the Maple Leafs, but I did say they were a playoff team this year because I feel like they've been doing the rebuild right. And I thought last year was the year they would make the playoffs, and they didn't. And I'm like, look, last year the East was just really hard. I know the East usually is a harder conference, and you can take any sort of joke and second meaning you want out of that. But it's just the fact that they've slid as much as they have. The fact that Chicago is still sticking where they are. I think I wanted to mention Anaheim. Anaheim's a team I didn't expect to be quite as bad. I don't know if I thought they were further along in their rebuild. And also, why the hell did the Coyotes not get Sonny Milano when he was a free agent? That could have helped with just some depth scoring.
Where would you put him? Like you would have had to take like Gunner or Michelli down to like put him in.
I probably would have had him somewhere in the bottom 6, and then you can have Jack McBain be your 4th line center, and you can still make it work. And then you probably, if you would have got some decent offers on Nick Ritchie when he was scoring early on, you just pull the trigger on whatever deal you get, and then you got Sonny Milano right there. Because the thing is, if you would have had him even as your extra scratched forward, they wouldn't have had to do the 7D thing they were doing for like a week and a half.
Yeah, that's true. I will say,
they also called up Dauphin and still didn't run him for the first game until they lost.
Yeah, I will say, man, it is crazy to think like how much rumor mill was going on about Jacob Chikrin. And, I know we asked for a lot. We asked for like Shane Pinto, who is looking like a pretty big piece of their lineup right now because of an injury. I believe it's Josh Norris who's out for like multiple months. That's why Pinto's getting so much play right now is because, they have to have somebody fill it. But it's crazy to think that even like some B tier asset or whatever, if the Ottawa's first was involved in that trade before the start of the season, that would have been pretty crazy to think that the Coyotes could have potentially had Ottawa's first at a time in which they're currently sitting in 31st in the league for worst statistics.
I have a lot of Senators fans. Shout out to Jacob, by the way. But it's the amount of Ottawa fans that are like, oh, I would only do a top 5 protected pick, or I'd only give up the 2024 pick. This draft's just too good. And I'm like, dog, you guys are supposed to be a playoff team. You guys shouldn't be anywhere near there. Yep. Like, the fact that those psychopaths were proven correct, at least as of right now, like, is Dorian their GM, or am I thinking of the wrong guy? And I'm
Dorian.
So it's like, did he know this team was gonna suck?
Well, I think
a magic genie or a fortune teller say, "Hey, Josh Norris, the very confusingly named player because his name is Norris and he plays center, not defenseman. That player, he's just gonna die. Like 5 games into the season, you're just not gonna have him anymore. Like,
yep.
Did he get that call? Did he wake up from a cold sweat and like I can't do that and just hold on to the pick? And now he's like, if we get Connor Bedard, we can just trade Josh Norris, or then we can trade Pinto High because we'll have Connor Bedard.
Well, I would say that Dorian, he was smart in the sense that I think he traded away a first, right? For who was it? Was
Was the Brinkett
Turris?
trade? Or was DeBrincat like less?
No. I'm talking years ago. I think it was Kyle Turris that he traded for, or maybe it was...
It was the Matt Duchene trade.
Matt Duchene, that's what it was.
Turris was involved in it, but it was the Matt Duchene trade.
Yeah. And he didn't protect that first, and then it ended up becoming like a fourth or something like that, I want to say. Was it Bowen Byram that they ended up getting with that pick? Like, after that, every GM has been, like, scarred with giving away unprotected firsts because they don't want to end up in that situation. So that probably definitely scarred him too, because he's like, I haven't seen this team.
From the value, like, hey, you want this top pairing defenseman, just Chicken for an example, at his max value, but we want the pick to be top 5 protected. So it's like, we're tanking. We want the highest possible pick. Why the hell would we agree to that? Like, I never agree with protections in general, and what the hell was it? Because which trade was it? I was like, yep.
The Devo trade. Yeah, if the Coyotes didn't protect, they didn't get the protection on the Devo trade, the Coyotes would have drafted 1st overall and 3rd overall last year.
They literally, you know what I would have done? Like, and again, I was against that from day one. I know, like, you can go watch that video. I was like, that's a stupid move. That is a dumb thing to do. There's no reason why you should accept that pick protection where it's like, hey, we could swap it. Because essentially, that was the one that got us, no, not Colorado's, that got us Carolina. So it dropped us down to, like, was that 25?
Yeah, so
whatever the hell it was.
It was Carolina's pick, which turned into, like, 29 or something like that. And then we moved up to 26 with Oilers to get Lamoureux.
No.
I believe
I think didn't we trade that to move up to get Geeky, then we traded the 32nd
overall
pick
yeah.
up.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. Anyway.
Yeah. That's what it was.
I saw that and I'm like, Montreal wasn't even supposed to be bad last year. I figured they would be mediocre. And I also, like, I don't know if I was just being nice, but I did not think they were going to be terrible. I genuinely did not think a Stanley Cup finalist would go from Cup finals to literal bottom of the league, like the lowest spot. So I'm like, why would you agree to that? Say, no, it's either your pick or Carolina's, and it needs to be defined now. And the fact that, like, if you do that, you trade number 1 overall for whatever stupid assets you're going to get for whoever wants Slavkovsky or Wright. You still pick Cooley 3 overall, and you have even more assets. Like, imagine, let's just say that Ottawa, right? Let's just pull Ottawa out of the hat. They really want Uri Slavkovsky, and they're willing to trade their first for this draft to move up in that draft, and the Coyotes would have had number 1 overall. You're telling me you don't say yes? Especially if you're the Coyotes and you know that Shane Wright doesn't want to come here, and I'm just going to assume Slavkovsky would have been at least neutral on it. So it's like, you have a guy that you want that wants to be here at number 3. You have number 3. Why not trade that number 1? So the fact that, like, that's the only blunder on BA's career, and it's like, I know it's a minor blunder. We still got Cooley, we still got Geeky, but the fact is we could have had number 1 overall for the first time in franchise history.
Yep. All because of protections. Well, it just shows you, like, that's the power of protections and why I don't think we're ever going to see a first really moved anymore that's like a playoff hopeful team without protections on it anymore. Like, I can understand if you're a wagon at the trade deadline and you know, like, there's no possible chance that we're missing the playoffs. I'm going to trade away my first with no protections. Like, I get those ones, but I'm talking about, like, a team that's, like, in the wild card or maybe just outside of the wild card. Like, every single one of those firsts are now just protection. It's kind of sucky. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm almost wondering, like, I know this is going to sound too much and people are going to say, oh, well, then trades aren't going to be done anymore, but if we need to have like a rule that steps in and says, okay, you can't do protections anymore. Like, this is getting a little ridiculous.
Well, I feel like there should be an amended to where you cannot have more than one, like, top 10 or top 5, or it has to be, like, a top 3, whatever it is.
Yeah, what about, like, a top 3?
Every, like, 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, you can only have it every 3 years or something like that, to where it's, like, top 10 protected is weird. Like, the top 3 is the one that I'm actually offended by, because, like, that's the one, like, those picks you want.
Those are the most valuable.
You can only do one. It's like, okay, so let's say it goes by calendar year. So let's say for the 2020 draft, you traded for a top protected pick. Whether the protection is used or not, your protection is used up. You can't use it again until, what that be, 2023? It has to be 3 calendar years away. I think that would be the only way to counteract it. But the thing is, we haven't seen enough protected picks traded yet. We're only seeing the fans with their little mock trade saying, oh yeah, everything has to be protected. But the problem is, if the fans have caught on to that, you cannot tell me with how many, you could have had that players that we've seen, like in these, draft retrospectives, you cannot tell me that executives don't have it on the mind. I'd find it hard to believe that that's the only thing they're thinking about, but you cannot tell me it's not on the mind. Like, I have to know. I have to be sure. If anything, that might be why we're seeing, like, potentially bigger moves set up for trade deadlines, because you want to see what the player looks like that year. You want to know what you're getting that season, and you want to know what your team definitively needs, because I think, as crazy as all the off-season stuff is, I also feel like, minus this offseason was kind of crazy, I feel like in general you're seeing a little less of the big splashes in the offseason, and it's going more towards a setup for a big trade deadline. Whether it ends up being big or not, I feel it's like we don't want to throw it away in the offseason. We're going to wait until we know where we're at, whether it's worth this risk, or, hey, we're only 6 points up from the 5th best odds at the first overall pick. F it! Let's just let the wheels fall off the wagon, as it were.
Yep, and a lot of teams do that, and they'll trade away players. I mean, we saw it with the tank for Connor McDavid, where Buffalo's goalie had, like, 2 consecutive wins, and they're like, trade him away, like, get him out of here. Like, yeah.
That was, like, so embarrassingly, like, blatant of a tank. Like, people like to, for whatever reason, say how embarrassing the Coyotes tank was, but in my opinion, it was just a logical start to your tank. I don't understand, like, that being egregious or anything. It was a tank, but I just don't think it was particularly egregious. But, like, the fact that karma stacked up and they only got number 2 overall, and then that inept organization ended up screwing over their star player, and then, like, the fans turned on that player when all he wanted was to get his neck properly fixed. Yep. Oh, golly gee.
He wasn't allowed to bodily autonomy. Yeah. Like, okay.
So it's like, oh yeah, no, it's great. You're just a hockey player. Like, you don't need to be able to have a say whether or not you could turn your effing neck, 20 years from now. So it's stupid. So it's like the fact that they not only got the consolation prize, but they also ruined the consolation prize and then had to trade him away, and now he's having a phenomenal season for Vegas. It took a year, which sometimes it does. So I'm like, hey, good for Jack Eichel. I like Jack Eichel. I wouldn't have minded seeing Jackery Eichel in a Coyotes jersey, because that would still be the best center we've ever had.
Yeah, could you have imagined Jack Eichel with Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz? Or even more crazy, you had the trade deadline acquisition and you had Taylor Hall on the team. Jack Eichel, Taylor Hall, Clayton Keller.
Then again, just insane. Imagine if things like... And I will not stop banging on about this. I am tired of, the contract will be worth it for the first X amount of years. Then just sign him to that contract. Like, if Goligoski would have had 1 less year on his deal, if this or that player has 1 year less on that deal, Bill Armstrong could have completely, with the cap space to do it, justified re-signing Hall, adding more pieces. We could have still been a fringe playoff contender. Now... This is the better route to build a cup contender, but the fact is you still had the skeleton of a roster and a core that if they added to it would have been fine. The problem was they didn't have the cap space. They didn't have the room to be able to do any of these moves. So it's like, I'm so tired of these stupid arguments. I know it's a tangent of like, the contract will be worth it for the first 5 years. Then sign them for 5. Because, you can just trade away the last 2 years. So you have to sacrifice a second or a first to get rid of 2 years of a contract, or buy him out.
Or in Toronto's case, you sacrifice a first to get Patrick Marleau off your team. who then turns
it's so
into Jarvis,
stupid.
I think. Yeah.
I don't understand this mindset because, like, look, Goligoski was a good player. I think if that contract was a 3-year contract, fans would have been like, yeah, let's keep him here longer. I think you add those couple extra years, because even, like, the year before it expires, like, he was really showing a lot of decline. Apparently it had a lot to do with, he stopped loving the game of hockey or whatever, and I'm like, cry me a river, you're a millionaire. Like, you're signing these big contracts, we can't just fire you and replace you with somebody else, so suck it up and get out there. But any of these contracts, you take a year or two off, they go from, they were good, to, that was a good contract the entire time.
Yep.
It's so stupid. Like, Father Time's undefeated. Everyone gets old. I could blow my knee out tomorrow. Do you think if my employer signed me to a 10-year contract, they'd be completely okay with paying me for the next 9 years?
Yep. Exactly. And to go back, actually, sorry, I'm looking at histories now. I think what it was is that Ottawa got the 3rd overall pick, which was Tim Stützle from the San Jose Sharks because of the Erik Karlsson trade. I think that's what it was. I don't remember. It's been a while, but I just remember there was some craziness where there was an unprotected pick that ended up being really high. And it's like, it baffles my mind that, it takes so much effort to get one of these high picks because of all these protections. It's just crazy.
I also find it weird that a team that is pushing for a playoff spot can, like, I know people hate tanking for whatever reason. I'm like, dude, for a small, like, most of the people that hate tanking are big market fans, but for small markets that you can't attract those top tier free agents, your only route is the draft. And it's like, okay, we got to make tanking as inefficient as possible, which it's still, like, good enough to where for the most part you're fine. It's just those top 3 players in every draft really are a little harder to get.
Yep.
So it's same people that also want, like, the weird luxury tax system because the rich get richer.
Yeah.
It's, if you keep making building your team the right way through the draft even more and more difficult, like, it's weird that you can essentially take away the risk of, you throw away that first round pick because you want to go for a playoff spot, you miss the playoffs, so now that's your risk reward. Your reward is the potential payoff, but the risk is, you don't get that next first round asset. You can literally, with a takesies backsies, get a top 5 pick, and you still got that player, and let's say they have 1 year left and you re-sign them, you almost got them for free. Like, I know you still got to pay that asset the next year, but, like, let's say that 3rd overall pick is Logan Cooley. Let's just pretend Logan Cooley becomes a 50-goal scorer. Just pretend he becomes this, like, top 15 player or something like that. Well, that means a team that was already in a playoffs position that just fell off for whatever reason now has that asset that probably should have gone to a team that sucked.
Yep.
Like, 'cause that's the only way you rebuild. Like, the Arizona market, yes, it's funny and it's true. Though every wife wants to play here, every wife and girlfriend wants to be in Arizona because the weather's nice. California, Florida, markets like that. But when you got a player that I want to win, if you don't have that core already, it's harder to get them. If you have a decent core, but New York's calling and their core could even be the exact same level or even just a little better, but because the market even a little worse realistically, you're probably not getting that player. So it's like the only way to really build and attract the free agents is to go through the draft. But then they try to make it as difficult as possible for teams that are trying to go that route to be successful, which the ways they do it aren't even that effective, but let's just pretend they are so they don't try to make it even worse.
Yep.
Like, I think, realistically, only the top 3 picks should be lottery. Like, honestly.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I think, too. I think that, like, when you make it, like, top 10, I think, personally, to me, that's when it becomes kind of insulting, where it's just, like, it's like, I had something in my head that I was thinking of that would be kind of similar. Okay, so for me, like, putting, like, a top 10 protection is, like, the same equivalent as, like, I'm gonna hand you my garbage, now make the trade. Like, you see those trades where they're just like, here's all my bottom sixers, give me your best player. It's like, that's what I feel like when I see top 10 protections. Like, I can understand a top 3. You're like, okay, the wheels fell off. We got super lucky in the lottery, whatever. You know, there's the top 3 protection. Fine. But, like, when it's a top 10, I feel like it's a slap in the face. It's just like, okay, you gambled and you lost. You ended up at 8. You ended up at 6. It's the way it goes. A perfect example of this is actually the Chicago Blackhawks, who took the gamble and traded Seth for Seth Jones, and they lost. They ended up giving that 2022 first-round pick, which ended up to be 6 overall, which turned into David Jiricek. Oops.
Good player, by the way.
Yeah, Jiricek is probably going to be as good, if not better, than Seth Jones in, like, 2 years. Yeah.
But also, it's weird that teams that just barely missed the playoffs, like, the Coyotes should have picked number 2 overall last year. Like, I know in the grand scheme of things, we got the player we wanted. It worked out anyway. But let's just pretend it's the exact same scenario. Let's just say Montreal again. They have the number 1 overall odds. Coyotes have the number 2 overall odds. And it's like, okay, but you get kicked out to number 3 because a team that missed the playoffs by 5 points or whatever the hell jumps over you. Like, you literally just lost out on a franchise-altering player for a team that is good, or a player that is good. Like, what? How does that make sense? Like, the fact that you could jump so high. It's like, oh, you can't jump more than 10 spots, but because of, was it New Jersey that won the draft lottery again last year, but because they didn't win number 1 overall, they could still win it again?
Yeah.
You have to win number 1 overall, not just win the draft lottery. So it's like, it is so dumb. It is so blatantly stupid. So where, like, if it was this draft and I had to lose Fantilli, and it's like, Michikov's going to be a great player. 100%.
We don't need him, though.
But the problem, another problem is the fact that because of the Russian factor, we have no idea what the long-term ramifications are going to be with Russian prospects.
Yep.
Thankfully, the NHL hasn't gone full Canadian Hockey League, where they're like, oh, well, if you're Russian, you just can't be in the draft, because that's blatantly stupid. But, you know, you still don't know how long these players are going to be developing over there, how long they have to serve whatever time, because I know for government or military service, you can actually use, like, hockey for this Team Russia as part of your military service. That's how it was explained to me. So it's like how long they have to be there, how long the contracts are. Like, you have to wait. And you also don't even know if they'll want to come here. Like, Kirill Kaprizov, imagine if he just said no to going to Minnesota. It took them a while to get him over here, too. But just imagine he's like, nah, I don't want to. Especially with, again, the Russian factor, with I want to say the reaction of a lot of companies in the West, particularly the companies and the people that have, like, gone so anti-Russian people because of the actions of their idiot leader. So where it's like, how many players are now going to be like, well, the people that were there to support me were, you know, the people in Russia, and I'm not going to leave. Like, we don't even know what the actual downsides are going to be. So that means the Coyotes would have to then take a lower-ranked prospect at number 3 or risk it.
Yep.
Just completely risk it, all because this system allows a team that barely missed the playoffs to jump ahead of them.
Yeah. Now, granted, that New Jersey's Devils team was at 5th last year, but that's not to say New Jersey has, like, jumped up how many times? Like, they're turning quietly into the Edmonton Oilers of the East. And luckily, finally, they've figured it out. All it took was, you know, continuous first overall picks to finally get somewhere with that 10. Team. Yeah.
Oh, wait, you're talking about Edmonton. Sorry, I thought you were talking about New Jersey. I'm like, continuous top 10. But no, yeah, Edmonton could, like, what, 3 first overalls in 4 years?
Yeah, so that was Edmonton. But I was actually talking about New Jersey, because they moved up like 4 times, and I not to first, but like
for Heischer and Hughes, right? It was just
20,
so those was it 2020 and 2017 or 2019, 2017.
Yeah, something like that. I think they had one more in there, and then also the most recent draft when they went from 5th to 2nd and picked up Nemec.
I thought they were at 11th because it was like, oh, they jumped up, and the max you can do is 10 spots. So when it came to number 2 overall, it was between, you know, Montreal or Arizona who was going to drop. So I think they were 11th overall odds.
Last year?
Yeah, for the 2022 draft. I'm
No,
pretty sure that's how it worked.
It says, so I'm actually reading the cliff note. Won the second draft lottery to move from 5th to 2nd overall. So they were at 5th.
That's weird because I thought it was a lot higher than that when they called it.
No.
I could just be misremembering.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
There was a few years ago where there were other teams, like including the New York Rangers, who conveniently did that as well. New Jersey, I was just saying, like, consistently has picked like top 5 in quite a few years. So 2021, so in 2022, let me give context here. 2022, they move up to 2nd, get Nemec. 2021, they're at 4, they get Luke Hughes. That was just by their own volition. Let's see here. 2020, they did not move up, but the Rangers moved up to 1st from 10th, and then LA moved from 2nd to 4th. Let's see, 2019. The Rangers again moved up from 6th to 7th, and then also the New Jersey Devils moved up from 3rd to 1st to get Jack Hughes, who is not a bad player.
Good player. I don't know why everyone was like so hard on him his rookie year. I'm like, it was a bit of a slow start. He was still good. It just he had to figure it out. Like not every player can immediately jump in and produce, top line production at the NHL level. Like some players, it takes a couple of years.
Here's another one, 2018. The Carolina Hurricanes moved from 11th to 2nd to pick up Svechnikov. It's just Svechnikov.
And then single-handedly made me like Jordan Martin. Look, I went from not liking the dude to, you know what? Good guy.
I love Martinook. And then the last one here that I wanted to point out is the 2017 draft, where we saw New Jersey Devils go from 5th to 1st. The Philadelphia Flyers go from 13th to 2nd, picking up Nolan Patrick. Oof, considering the next person behind them was Miro Heiskanen. And in order to get Miro Heiskanen, the Dallas Stars went from 8th to 3rd. Like, the movement has been just absolutely insane these past, 5 years.
Up? No. Like, to my knowledge, they've only ever moved down, and the highest they've picked is 3rd. And they should have picked 2nd last year. Again, they should have had 2nd overall, and I know last year it didn't end up hurting them, but in a draft like this, let's just say Michkov goes 3rd. So it's Bedard and Fantilli. That literally is costing you a player that you could play as early as that season for Magic Beans. A player that is Magic Beans.
A player that you desperately need, which is a centerman. We need centermen. We need them. We need a Bedard or a Fantilli. I'm fine with either.
Centerman. We have good center depth. We need that top centerman.
Yeah, we need one of those two. And if we end up with, no offense, I don't think Michkov is bad, but Michkov won't be playing next year. He'll be playing 3 years from now, which is going to be an absolute waste of our time, because next year is the idea of the Coyotes being competitive again. It's not, we're going to be the wagon, but next year is like we're going to start trying again. Mm-hmm. And you have a guy who's going to sit in the Continental Hockey League for 3 years. Maybe even more. Maybe never. Maybe he never comes over. We don't know.
Now, again, just to acknowledge it, play devil's advocate. You could be 3 years down the line. You're in your brand new arena. You're like, you know what? We can use one more scorer. Like we can use that one extra asset. You move a guy out just to make roster space for him. And let's say he's like, yeah, Arizona's great. He comes in, it's phenomenal. He's the last piece. They go on a deep run. Let's say they make it to the Final Four 3 out of the next 5 years, and they win 1 cup. Great, cool. I would love that to happen. But the fact, when it comes to managing anything in general, yes, there's always risk. You can never avoid risk. The goal is to have the lowest amount of risk, to be able to control the maximum amount that you can control. And in a situation like this, I'm like, if we get screwed out, just straight up, again, let's pretend the position's the exact same, draft odds the exact same, we should get number 2 overall, and we don't. You are losing an asset this team desperately needs. That Fantilli looks like he could be ready. So let's just say he comes in next year, he already becomes your first line center. Cooley can come up, however you want to handle that. You know, he said he wanted to play 1 year of collegiate and then he wants to make a run at the NHL. It could
Yep.
take Geeky 3 years. Let's just say 3 years for Geeky.
Yeah, I would say
Right
that's
there, like, you know, that screws you over. That ruins the plan. That goes
Yep.
from it like hey, we have our projected 1C to hey, Cooley, who I'm just going to be a little more conservative with my estimates, probably is your second line center. Good player. Probably is your second line center. Hey, we need you to be a first. And you know what a perfect recipe for ruining a prospect is? Asking too much of them. Trying to rush them. Trying to give them too much responsibility. So I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be the optimist, and I generally am. But when we're talking about the topic of, like, the draft odds, and this is a different beast than last year where I was like, it's fine, and there are other good players, and they still have a good chance of being able to move up if they need to, because I genuinely think first overall last year could have been up for grabs depending on the asking price. If they really needed number one, but they were fine.
yeah.
It's just a different beast.
Something I do want to point out, which I found quite interesting, was that when we played the Montreal Canadiens this year, they had their PHNX had their like post game, where they talk about the game, and something that Craig said was very fascinating is that he knew that if they won first overall, that the Coyotes were also going to be picking Slavkovsky.
Really?
Which was very fascinating. Yeah, he said that he like. I don't remember the exact verbiage he used, so I can't say that he confirmed it.
Just say paraphrase.
Paraphrasing, he was saying like, yeah, the Coyotes would have picked Slavkovsky at first overall as well. So, kind of interesting. Didn't suspect that one, but yeah.
Especially like I know he's probably going to be better than Krauser, but they essentially kind of fill a similar role.
Yeah,
he's like a bigger, scoring winger. And again, if you can upgrade, and it's like, hey, now Kraus is up for grabs. It's like cool, but
what fascinates me about that, I know that these are two really
rumors.
good players. Well, no. I'm going to move into this year's draft here. What fascinates me about that rumor is it because Slavkovsky is good, or is it because Bill Armstrong has been on this like train of they have to be big players, they have to be big physical players? Because if the Coyotes for some reason end up at first overall, does Bill Armstrong end up going with Fantilli over Bedard because Fantilli is the bigger player?
I don't think they can. Like, I get the mindset. I'm not going to try to disagree with the mindset. Especially if, like, at this point, I have no reason to doubt Craig Morgan, especially with how long he's worked with these guys.
Yeah.
So, hey, we like, Slavkovsky. We're not going to pass that up. We take Slavkovsky number one overall. Okay, I can see it. I'm glad we got Cooley. Again, nothing against Uri Slavkovsky. I think Cooley was the right fit.
Yeah.
But when you go into, like, Bedard is generational, and I know it gets thrown away too much, and I know I tried to like stay as calm as I could on this kid for as long as I possibly could. It was a genuine effort. I think that's a kid, like, would you pick Eichel over McDavid? Like, would you be able to do that if you were the GM?
I don't know. That's the tough part, right? Like, hindsight 2020, obviously no. I would pick McDavid, but I don't know.
I feel like I would have picked McDavid too. I feel like for AM34, you're picking AM34. So it's like I feel like this is that. Last year wasn't the draft. This is the draft where I think that number one overall pick is solidified a year in advance.
Okay.
It's where it's like I see
there's
the
no
logic.
there's no
I love
contest.
Fantilli. I don't see it unless something out of the blue happens. Unless Fantilli goes off for like 70 goals in the next 10 games, like something unrealistic, or God forbid, something happened, like an injury for Bedard. I don't see it this with this specific draft.
Yeah. All right. That's all I wanted to say. I will say this though. Interestingly enough, I'm jumping around topic to topic here. I'm sorry. We're over the time limit, and I'm trying to speed run topics. If the Coyotes get a top 2 pick in one of these two centermen, does Barrett Hayden become cannon fodder?
I mean, he's been a very effective 3C. I think it depends on what he wants If Barrett Hayton is like, no, I want to be a first-line center, I'm going to use Fantilli. I think that's more realistic. Fantilli is your 1C. Cooley developed the way I'd like him to. He's your 2C. You're not better than Cooley and Fantilli, I'm sorry to say. So I was like, okay, well, either I'm not going to re-sign, so you might as well trade him, or, like, hey, I don't want to re-sign, but there's no interest elsewhere. Maybe you can get him on your third line permanently, but it's like, if he's motivated to want to be top 6, he's just not good enough here because of the personnel. I can see him, even if it's behind the scenes quietly, making it known that he doesn't want to be here anymore, which then means that's trade fodder. Now, what do you do with that? No idea, depending on what you need. I'm just going to say right shot defenseman, because why not throw something out there? But that's the only realistic scenario, because I don't see him being better than Cooley and Fantilli. So It's like, I also don't know if he'd want to just accept third line, because right now he's getting top 6 minutes. He's been fighting between second, third line, even some first line minutes, playing against first lines. It's like, he's earned a lot of ice time, but when you get 2 more better centermen in front of him, unless there's injuries or something, you're not getting that top 6 ice time anymore.
Well, arguably, he's been on an even slower pace for points than he was last year, which even last year, which I felt was pretty slow. Remember, we were comparing him to Filip Zadina, who was the pick after him. He, in 60 games last year, had 24 points. Currently, in 16 games, he has 3 points, which is a pace at 82 games that is only 15 points this season. The offense has not been promising for him. And I remember at the beginning of the year, I think I said 50 points is what I was projecting him to get, 55 points or something.
I wanted 40. You wanted 55. You wanted, like, a huge season, and I don't know why I didn't see that. I'm just like, I would like 40 points. I like a point every other game. I guess it's also because I want to see him healthy a full year. I want to see just the points go up. I don't need it to be the big jump yet. But if this pace continues, like, yeah, that 3-point streak was good. Now he's been, fell off another couple of games off the score sheet, which is fine. But if he doesn't score again on Monday, you start getting back on a bad pace. And at that point, is he forcing his way out because, well, Jack McBain can be third center. Nathan Smith can be third center. Jack McBain stays either on the fourth line or stays as a third line winger. And it's essentially what we were talking about at the start of the season, but before final roster cuts, is, he's done a good job getting center depth here. We just don't have that 1C, but we have 2 through 4. Easy. And we have a replacement for at least 3 and 4. I don't know if we quite have a player that can just jump up right now for second line minutes, but at least we have a bottom 6 depth for days. The problem is, does that no longer include Barrett Hayton if he stays cold offensively? Because he's doing a lot of good things defensively, but would he still want that bigger role? And it seems like he does. He looks motivated. He's looked better this year. It's just the offense hasn't come along with it. So I'm like, would that derail his time here and make it to where, like, the team and player want different things? If I'm making sense.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. These are questions that we ask ourselves every single day.
I wake up in a cold sweat. Barrett, don't leave.
All right. I think we've gone way too long. We are 30 minutes past our talkies here, so I think I'm going to have to shut her down. Is that all right with you?
Comment, favorite, subscribe. Send me pictures of your dog on Twitter. Applications for the Weak Chin Society. Last thing. We should start a campaign to get Dylan Gunther to acknowledge the Weak Chin Society. Also, congratulations on Richie for 100 subscribers. After enough e-begging, we finally got there.
Yes,
We're
thank you.
Above the century mark, and I remember my first 100 subscribers. I say arrogantly like it didn't take me 4 years to accumulate 300 of them.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. And if you're listening to this audibly on whatever platform you're listening to it on, like Matt just said, make sure to give us a like, a follow, a subscription on any of those, because where else are you going to find subpar Coyotes content on the internet?
Subpar? You're giving us way too much credit. This
Yeah.
is like we are the Goodwill of podcast.
Hey, can we get a helmet sponsor? Can we get a helmet sponsor? Okay.
Hey, can we get a certain a burger joint to sponsor us? Richie knows what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure you saw the tweet, but no free ads. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That is quite a water burger.
Yeah. I hate when my burgers are watery.
I wish it was a little more good.
if you're listening to us audibly, we do have the pretty version on YouTube, so make sure to go cross germinate all the platforms. So if you're I'm using big words here. You think but that means jump different platforms. You can see our faces on YouTube.
Quick,
anyways,
spell Mississippi.
MISSISSIPPI.
Now spell I cut backwards.
ICUP.
No, it's P. Isn't it PUCI if it's backwards?
I don't know. Whatever.
Jerk.
I know the joke.
No way.
Okay, yeah. Anyways, I remember the jokes. I remember the childhood, yeah. All right. Bye. See you later. I'm out of here.